Hi, Nick Tockert here with the Historical Fencing Guild. Well, folks, I want to talk to you about a subject that's running rampant a lot, and it's hate. And I'm looking at it from a martial artist and maybe even a martial uh, perspective, because fairly recently it's been a few months, but things sometimes rattle around. I got into an argument with someone because their theory, and it's a matter of training, is you have to hate your enemy. And I see this a lot. And as this tide of polarity, as this tide of extremism seems to be running rampant, it hits all fields, including that of the fencing field, including, when I talk to my students. And what I teach, I try to teach in a practical way. It means it's not as showy as some of the other stuff that you see. It's that I don't aggrandize accoutrements, accessories. If it works and it works for you, then it's a good thing. A very, very practical approach. But when I do that, I also have to realize that some people come to me and they want to learn as a way of empowerment. And empowerment in this case means practical real world situations, e.g., knowing that if they were getting beat up, they could pick up a broomstick and hold their own. So there's a an element of having to understand the law just a little bit. I'm not a lawyer. I pay people to do that, but I do understand the law. I understand certain concepts that one parallel with this, and I understand it on a spiritual level. And I'm going to get to that later. Now, the concept of the law is for self-defense to be a thing, you have to use the minimum force necessary. So if someone is attacking you and with the obvious intent to harm, you know, assault, to rape, even murder, you are allowed and expected to do what you can to defend yourself. This is why, this is expected, but you're only supposed to do the minimum. So it's, if you hit a guy, if somebody's trying to assault you, and you break his knee with you hit a blow that breaks his knee or whatever, you can leave. He can't pursue you. You're expected to leave. You're expected to, in the law, to whenever possible try to remove yourself from a situation. And we have to train when we're thinking in terms of defense that way. And to do that, it takes a level of emotional and, dare I say, spiritual control. Right now, there are people, and it's on, especially in America, it's on both sides of the political spectrum, who at the extremes, find reasons to have messages of hate and attitudes of hate. And it's something that's glorified. And I don't think it needs to be. First, from a legal and practical, and I start there. I try to start with, hierarchy of needs. You to stay alive. Yes, you may have to do violence at some point. I've experienced a lot of violence. I've experienced a lot of kinds of violence, and they are different. And you have to be able to, from an almost detached clinical mindset, look at them as best you can. You're going to have emotions. You're going to have hormones. The endorphins are going to go nuts in any violent situation, whether you're the recipient or the aggressor. but we are thinking sentient beings. And I feel that any martial art that projects an an embracing of the excess, the you know, maim them, kill them, destroy them, hate your enemy, consume, rage. I mean, it sounds dark side, and perhaps on a battlefield that may be necessary for some. I don't know. But I don't think it's necessary in the civilian world. Now, I'm not saying that violence isn't necessary, because sometimes tragically it is. And I'm not saying even at times lethal measures aren't necessary. Because, again, tragically, society fails and individuals fail so hard sometimes that, like a rabid dog, they have to be put down. It's terrible, and it should be the last thing anybody wants to do. Is the last place anyone should want to go mentally. But I see this projected hunger for that again. It had gone away. It had really seemed to subside for a while. And I feel and I think, as we feel more powerless as individuals, we look for the more traditional ways to reacquire power. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous because there's always a debt to it. Anytime you have to do something, I mean, regardless of perhaps your religious background, I do believe, both in observations and through spiritual pursuits. I don't try to get very religious or anything on this channel, because it's not what this is supposed to be about, but it has to feed in here. I believe we're supposed to do to people like we want done to ourselves. And whether the accounting is through, karma, where, what you put out is what you get eventually, or, a judgment in the afterlife, that doesn't matter. But the understanding that there is a force that will try to balance that. We do not live in a randomized universe, in my opinion. And that's part of why I'm making this video, because I teach people a science and an art of injury. Realistically, if I'm teaching someone to sword fight, whether it's for sport, whether it's for LARP, whether it's for health, I am imparting a way that untrained, they would not be as proficient at that type of violence. And that's why I'm very selective of my students. It's why I'm very selective of my source materials. Because I truly believe if you have to hurt someone for your own defense, that is a necessity. Hating them is not. You can hate what they're doing. But hating an individual is a very dangerous and slippery slope, because then it allows you to justify any number of things. And I understand how tempting it is, how empowering righteous anger and fury feels. But it really does go back to that thing of hating somebody is putting a hot coal in the middle of your hand and letting it burn you and thinking, feel that, feel it. Because the real tragedy is, the real thing is, the vast majority of people aren't empathic enough to even have an idea. And the real rat finks of this world just don't care. So it's a waste of your energy. I know what it's like to be scared. I know what it's like to be I know it's like to hate the people who have put you there, and hate yourself for being too weak to get into that position. But it doesn't. No fruit can bloom when planted in hate, only by love can we transcend what we are. And I think that's important. It's important enough I'm doing a big old long video on it. We need to be better than we are. I think as people, especially, you know, in America. I think we're being groomed to hate others so we don't see the actual problems. I think it's it's a shell game, and that won't solve our problems. Now, if you see something wrong, you should act. You should act morally, but you should act out of wanting to do the right thing to build rather than acting out of destruction and rage. Because while the initial steps feel very similar, the paths it leads you on are radically different. And just as teaching, you know, I don't teach the art of aggression. I don't teach the art of looking for trouble. I teach defense. I teach the art of defense. That's what the best fencing manuals come from. It's the smartest way. It's the kindest way to neutralize a threat. It's what you should always go for. I would rather be called every slur in the world than spill somebody's blood. And I've stood there and done that. And I know what it's like to be beaten for your beliefs. That changes you. It starts to disjoin the threat of violence with the idea of your beliefs. Because if something is moral and just and right, if it is brought from a attitude of genuine, love and fairness and justice, beating somebody won't change that. Likewise, if someone is attacking you to take your things for moral or social or religious reasons, for whatever reasons, you have every right to be angry. You have every right to do what you have to do. But I implore you, because if all goes well, you wake up the next morning and you have to wake up every morning after that. And you gotta look in the mirror. And you gotta get right with that. This has caused some animosity in some circles I've traveled. Because I don't think hatred is necessary. Feel free to comment. I'm sure many people will disagree with me on this. They'll tell me I'm an idealist or a pacifist. And I am, among many things, I am a failed pacifist. But I learned a lot from it. Though that wasn't, at the time, my path to walk. I did gain wisdom from the experience. And it's something that, though I think may be impossible, it's something to aspire to. I hope you found this little bit of a discussion interesting. I hope that the comments on this can lead to more civil, please, discussion on the philosophy of martial arts and the combat, the price. I I hope it helps. I hope it's an interesting bit of thought. And if you like what I'm doing, please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. If you have questions, comments, please. That's what the comment box is for. I'm notoriously good about checking that. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. If you really want to help, I have a Patreon. We could use the money. If you want to learn my style, the simple sword, the links are below. I have many things on Amazon, a lot of game design. I'll probably do a video about that. But for now, support your local swordmaster.